Welcome to qiphyedu. Today we'll be looking at Economics A2 level, paper 31, May, June 2022. Alright, let's start. Okay, so for the first question it says, which statement identifies the condition necessary to achieve Pareto optimality? Pareto optimality is basically when there's no way that someone else is made better off without making someone else worse off. So let's look at the four options here and see which one is correct. So A, it says all consumers maximize their utility subject to their available income, which is incorrect. This one is basically this is basically if something is shown on the budget line, but it's not related to Pareto optimality. And second, it says it is not possible to produce greater output with the resources available, which is incorrect. You can, but by doing so, you'll result in less efficiency. And C, it is not possible to reallocate resources to make someone better off without someone else becoming worse off, so this is correct. And D, potential losers from any reallocation of resources cannot be compensated by those who gain, which is incorrect. So answer is C. Question 2, the diagram shows a production possibility curve for the economy producing agricultural goods and manufacturing goods. And what can be concluded from the diagram? So this is a PPC curve, and this PPC curve has an increasing opportunity cost. We're moving from L to M. So you can see from the four options here, let's look at A. The economy must be allocatively efficient at point R, which is incorrect. PPC actually shows the maximum combination of two goods that an economy could produce. So factoring in this statement, this means that this PPC curve does not take into account allocated efficiency, but only productive efficiency, because we are trying to produce as efficiently as possible when it comes to productivity. So if you touch the lines like S and L, this means that you could produce up to the point where you'll be able to have productive efficiency but not allocated efficiency. Right. B, it says the economy is Pareto efficient at point T, which is incorrect because point T is within the DTC. And C, the economy is productively efficient at point S, which is correct because it is on the curve. So yes, C is correct. And D, the opportunity cost is constant as we move from L to M, which is incorrect because you can see this is an increasing opportunity cost. So answer is C. Question 3, the private benefit of an activity is greater than the private cost. The social benefit of the same activity is less than the social cost. So what must be true of this activity? Okay, so private benefit greater than private cost. So your private benefit is greater than your private cost. This means that the person is actually benefiting more than actually having to pay for that particular thing. And then the social benefit of the same activity is less than the social cost, which means that the society is actually worse off as a whole, right? So that means that your external benefit would be less than your external cost. So A, it says external benefit is equals to external cost, which is incorrect. B, it says external benefit is more than your external cost, which is incorrect. And C, it says external benefit is less than your external cost, which is correct. And D, it says external benefit is more than private benefit, which is incorrect. The reason why external benefit is not more than private benefit is because, as you can see here, it says private benefit is greater than private cost. Okay, that's one. And second, it says the social benefit is less than the social cost. So that means that the external benefit should be lesser. And it should be, in this case, right, it should be lower than private benefit by a huge margin. So answer is C. Question 4. What is the central principle of marginal utility theory? Okay, marginal utility theory. So this means that if you consume more of that particular good, like extra units, then your marginal utility will decrease. Alright, so this one is central principle. So that means we're talking about equimarginal principle. So that means MUX divided by PX equals to MUY divided by PY. So let's look at the options here. A, it says as more is consumed of a normal good, the additional satisfaction gain increases. The additional satisfaction gain increases. So the additional satisfaction, that means the marginal utility gain increases, which is incorrect. The marginal utility will only decrease. So A is incorrect. And we're talking about central principle. B, consumers are at equilibrium when the marginal utility gain from good X equals the price of good Y, which is incorrect because it's like what I mentioned just now, is MUX divided by PX equals to MUY divided by PY. And C, consumers are at equilibrium when the ratio of marginal utility on good X and Y are equal to the ratio of the prices, which is correct. And D, consumers are in equilibrium when the total utility gain from good X is same as gain from good Y, which is incorrect because we're talking about marginal utility. So answer is C. Question 5, the diagram shows 5 budget lines. Line 1 is the original budget line, and which pair of budget lines shows a relatively higher price for drink compared with food after a move from budget line 1. Okay, so relatively higher price for drink, that means the line will shift in. And so if we move from budget line 1, this means that it could be budget line 3. So in this case, we are ruling out pool. So AB is wrong. And then we left C and D. So you can see here, if we were to compare 4 and 5, because we didn't know that 3 is definitely one answer because of the relatively higher price for drink. So you can see 4 and 5 here, the food prices compared to budget, the food price compared to budget line 1 is the same. But for drinks is relatively lower. But now we are talking about relatively higher price for drinks. So 4 is also ruled out. And you can see for budget line 5, food prices are relatively lower, but the drink price remains the same. Food prices are lower, and then drinks, the price of drink is actually same compared to budget line 1. Therefore, food is much cheaper than drink, and that means the drink will have a relatively higher price. So 4 and 5 is incorrect, so answer should be 3 and 5. Question 6, broken rice is an inferior good, and what would be the resulting income and substitution effect on the quantity demanded of broken rice if its price falls? So normally for inferior good, the price, if it falls, this means that people will buy more of it. Okay, so if you take a look here, quantity demanded due to income effect. So the quantity demanded due to income effect, this would fall because its price falls, and in this case here, income effect. So that means we're talking about when the income rises. So when income rises, normally people buy less goods. So the quantity demanded due to income effect will fall. So C and D is wrong. And the quantity demanded due to substitution effect. So if people were to substitute something, people would of course would go for the cheaper alternative. So for the cheaper alternative, broken rice is a cheaper alternative. So the quantity demanded due to substitution effect would actually rise. So answer is B. Question 7, firms in the market decide to collude over the price that they charge for their products and what is not likely to be a feature of the market. So normally if firms want to collude, this means that this market is an oligopoly. The market structure is basically oligopoly. So let's look at 4 options. Which one would not likely be a feature? So A, it says firms have similar cost structures, which means that yes, it is what an oligopoly would look like. And B, products of the firms are close substitutes, which is correct. And C, there are high barriers of entry into the market, which is correct as well. And D, there's a large number of competing firms. This means perfect competition. Or it could also be monopolistic competition. So this is not a feature of this market. So answer is D. Question 8, firms often remain small even when growth could result in technical economies of scale. And what is not a likely reason for this? So why is it not a reason for firms to remain small? So A, it says demand for this product tends to change often and rapidly. This is actually one of the reasons. And B, individual entrepreneurs wish to keep a tight personal control over their own firm, which is correct, one reason. And C, the entrepreneurs who establish the firms tend to be ambitious risk takers. This is incorrect because if they are ambitious risk takers, they would grow, which could result in technical economies of scale, but they decided not to. So this would be the correct answer as to why they would not grow. But then let's look at D. The market in which they operate is very specialized in nature. So yes, they will remain small because their market is very specialized. If they were to expand, then they will have to specialize, not selling unique products, but same products and mass produce it. So this is not what they want. Let's see C. Question 9, the diagram shows the short-run equilibrium for a firm operating in a monopolistically competitive market. And what is not likely to occur at the long-run equilibrium? Okay, in a monopolistic competitive market, which also means monopolistic competition, in the long run, people will only earn a normal profit. You realize that your AC curve is above P1. Actually, you will touch the AR curve, something like this. Something like this. Yeah, touches here. So what is not likely to occur at the long run equilibrium? So 9, A, it says the individual's firm demand curve is more elastic. In the long run, it will be more elastic, which is correct. And B, the individual's firm demand curve has moved left. Individual firm's demand curve has moved left. This is possible because of monopolistic competition. Maybe for some firms, they will have a decrease in demand. And C, the profit maximizing price is greater than the average cost. This is not going to happen. In fact, the profit maximizing price is actually going to be lower than the average cost. Because, like I mentioned, the AC curve will go up due to advertising and all those kind of things. And D says the profit maximizing price is greater than marginal cost. This one is correct. It will be greater than marginal cost. The marginal cost will still remain here, but then the average would probably remain here. It probably may go up, but the AC curve would go up and touch the AR curve. So I'll say C. Let's say C. Question 10, in which circumstance would direct provision of a product by the government be less likely? Okay, so normally when there's a direct provision of a product, this means that the product itself would be a public good or merit good. So A, it says when fixed costs are very high, which is possible. B, it says when the demand for the product is very high but unit costs are low, so this is least likely. Or not, it's not really that likely, because if the demand for the product is very high, that means people are buying it. Normally when there's direct provision of goods and services, normally that means that there's market failure. And C, when the industry faces large natural barriers to entry, which is possible for direct provision. And D, when the minimum efficient scale of production is above the level of demand at current prices, which is why there will be a direct provision of a product. So the best answer would be B, when the demand for a product is very high but unit costs are low. Question 11, the table shows a firm's total cost corresponding to different levels for output. If the market price is $8, within which range of output would a profit maximizing firm in a perfectly competitive industry produce in the short run? Okay, so market price is $8, so if you produce only one unit, the total cost is $8. And then if it's 2, then you need to multiply by 2, so you get 16. 16 divided by so market price is $8, total cost is $8, so you earn 0. And then for 2 units, you multiply by 8, you get 16. 16 minus 14, you get 2. And then 3 times 8, you get 24. 24 minus 18, you get 6. And then 8 times 4, you get 32. Minus 32 is 10. And then 8 times 5, 40. So you minus 28, you get 12. And then 6 times 8, you get 48. 48 minus 36, you get 12 as well. And then 8 times 7 is 56. 56 minus 46, you get 10. And 8 times 8 is 64. So 64 divided by minus 58, you get 6. So if the firm wants to maximize the profit, that means that they'll be producing at the point where the unit output will be 5 to 6. So A is wrong, B is wrong, D is wrong, as they say. Question 12 will encourage an increase in the number of small firms. A, it says increasing government regulation of conditions in the workplace, which is incorrect. If there's an increase in government regulation, then small firms will choose not to enter the market. And then B, more risk-averse lending policies by banks, which is not correct. Because risk cautious, meaning that it's very more difficult to get a loan. And C, stronger government laws against the growth of monopoly, which is correct. Because monopoly is basically the firm that's dominating the market. And D, tougher penalties in the case of personal bankruptcy. Normally for smaller firms, they will have a high chance of getting to file for bankruptcy. So D is incorrect to encourage increase in number of small firms. So I'll say C. Question 13, what is not a source of market failure? Okay, imperfect information is a source of market failure. Income inequality is not a source of market failure. C, monopoly is a source of market failure. And D, non-excludability is also a source of market failure. Imperfect information, why is it a source of market failure? Because if, let's say, the firm and the seller, they don't have perfect information of the product they're buying, of course, they would probably buy, they'll probably buy less of the good or buy more of the good, and so that's why that would be market failure. But income inequality is actually caused by taxes, and so instead of it being a market failure, in this case, income inequality is actually a government failure because of failure to actually redistribute the income. Monopoly, if let's say the monopoly, the reason why there's a monopoly is because the firm, there's no, at the very beginning, there's no like other firms that are entering the market. So because the fixed costs for producing the product is very high, so they can sustain. If they can sustain, then nobody else will be competing against them. So this is not exactly government failure, but more like market failure in this case. And then D is not excludability, is basically where everyone is able to enjoy the good. For example, in AS, there's this thing called the free rider issue, where people can listen. Let's say a restaurant is playing music, and then people outside could also listen to music. So that actually would be a thing. So that's market failure as well. So I'd say it's B, which in this case should be government failure. Question 14. A government issues free non-tradable pollution permits to firms. They specify the maximum amount of polluting gases these firms are allowed to emit. In a change of legislation, the permits can be traded with other firms. Assuming that all other costs and revenues remain the same, what will be the impact on the profits of the firms that are not buyers or sellers of the profit? Okay, so profits of buyers of permits would actually decrease, because now the permits can be traded with other firms, right? So the people who buy the permits, they will have a decrease in their profits, because they will need to buy the permits in order to gain the to be able to pollute the environment to a certain extent. So increase for profits of buyers of permits would be not correct. So it should be either A or B. Let's look at profits of sellers of permits. So profits of sellers of permits should increase. So answer is B. Right. So yep. Question 15. What is an example of Nash theory when applied to encourage healthy eating? Okay. A, it says advertising the benefits of healthy eating, which is not exactly actually a good example of Nash theory, because Nash theory is when you try to solely educate the people into buying healthy food. So even though you advertise benefits of healthy eating, this doesn't exactly mean that they will be actually purchasing the goods outright. Okay, so this one we'll leave it for now, but let's look at B. Increasing tax on sugary foods. If let's say sugary foods, the demand for sugary foods is inelastic, then even if you increase tax, we will still buy it. So not exactly correct. So it will only work to a certain extent. C, introducing a subsidy for fruit growers, which is not Nash theory. It's technically like direct provision goods and services. You could see B itself is like taxes and subsidies. This one is not part of Nash theory. A, advertising benefits of healthy eating it could be possible, but let's look at D. So markets putting fruit near cash registers, this is correct. And this is an example of Nash theory, because when you put it near the cash registers, people may consider buying the fruits. Right? So the best answer here should be D instead of A. Let's say D. Question 16, what is the definition of transfer earnings? Okay, transfer earnings is basically when the lowest amount needed to actually keep the factor production in that job. So A, it says the amount of earnings above that needed to keep a worker in the current job. This one is economic rent. B, the minimum earnings needed to keep a worker in the current job. Yes, I'll say it's B. Let's look at C and D first. The social security benefits paid to workers whose earnings are below the poverty line. This is in the form of transfer. This one is like welfare payments and all those. Nope, this is not correct. And D, the amount of earnings needed to cause the worker to change to a different job, which is incorrect. Okay. So question 17, the chart gives information about the average daily wage rate for all industries in India. What could cause this trend in wage rate? So you can see there's an increase in rupees per day. So A, it says an increase in capital intensive production, which is not correct. Normally there's capital intensive production, this is what will happen, decrease. And B, an increase in number of industrial workers, which is incorrect. Normally when there's an increase in supply, that means that there will be a decrease in normally there's a decrease in normally when there's an increase in industrial workers, this means that there is an increase in demand for work. So the wage rate should be lower. C, it says an increase in the number of people unemployed, which is incorrect. And D, an increase in the productivity of labor, so it should be D. When you have an increased productivity, that means that there will be higher MPP. When there's high MPP, there's higher MRP, and when there's higher MRP, you'll be able to pay a higher wage rate. Alright? Question 18, the table shows the annual percentage economic growth rates of 3 countries from 2012 to 2018. Brazil, Japan, and Spain. What chemical growth for the table? So A, it says Brazil was in the downturn of its trade cycle in 2015. So yes, that's correct, because they can see in 2015 there's a negative 3.5% annual percentage change in real GDP. Let's look at the other 3 options. B, it says Japan's real GDP was at its smallest in 2014, which is incorrect. The smallest real GDP should be in 2012, because you can see even though the percentage change is basically fluctuating, there's still an increase. So B is incorrect. C, Spain experienced the worst recession of the period. Incorrect, because there's recession in 2012 and 2013, but there's an increase as economic growth. from 2014 onwards, so it's incorrect. And D, Spain was in its downturn of its trade cycle in 2014, which is incorrect because you can see the GDP is positive. So answer is B. Question 19, what could cause the official statistics for the national income per head of a developing country to overstate the true level of economic well-being of its inhabitants? Okay, so overstate the true level of economic well-being, basically standards of living. And then national income per head of a developing country. So for 19, let's look at four options here. A, it says is that if there's dependence on barter in internal trade, which is incorrect. And B, if subsistence agriculture dominates total economic activity, which is incorrect. And C, if services are an important component of exports, which is incorrect. And so 19, it should be D, if there's extreme income inequality. Now, if let's say the subsistence agriculture dominates total economic activity, then you will be able to determine the national income per head based and also its true level of economic well-being of the inhabitants. So if you overstate it, that means that there is disparity. Even though there's a higher national income per head, that doesn't mean that everyone is enjoying that national income per head, right? So C, says services are an important component of exports, which is possible. If let's say that's the important component, that means it's the main component, right? So if there's actually income inequality, maybe the people who are richer, they would be richer, but then the poorer, they will be much poorer in general, or they'll be poor and they remain the same. The people who are richer, they'll become richer, and that will increase the national income. The national income, but that means that there's still a huge gap between the rich and the poor. So answer is D. Question 20: what is shown by the Castanets curve? Okay, the Castanets curve is about it's basically about income inequality. So A, it says the rise and then the fall in balance of trade deficit, which is incorrect. B, it says the rise and then fall in the economic growth rate as the GDP increases, which is incorrect. And C, the rise and then fall in inequality as the level of income per head rises, which is correct. And then D, the rise and then fall in tax revenue as the tax rates increase, which is incorrect. Like I mentioned, the Castanets curve is about inequality, income inequality, so I'll say C. Question 21, which type of unemployment is associated with a deficiency in aggregate demand? So there's a decrease in aggregate demand. So let's say this is the AD1 curve, AD1 curve. This is the AD2 curve. So there's a shift inwards. So that means it's having poor unemployment. So this is A. Question 22, there has been a switch in demand from goods produced by labor-intensive methods of production to similar goods produced using high technology methods of production. This has led to an overall increase in unemployment. And what is the best policy? So A, it says reduce the real income tax, which is not the best policy, okay? And B, it says increase the real interest on borrowing for investment, which is incorrect. And C, subsidize products produced by labor-intensive methods, which is correct. And D, subsidize exports produced by high-technology industries, which is incorrect. Now, if you reduce the real income tax, this is going to help. This is going to help increase employment, but it will result in higher income inequality because of a decrease in the redistribution of income. So that's not a good idea. And B, increasing of real interest on borrowing for investment, which is possible to reduce. Machines and all those, but then at the same time your AD will also decrease, so it will also lead to unemployment. So C would be the best answer, because D, if you subsidize exports produced by high technology industries, this means that if you subsidize it, meaning that people will purchase more machines because of now of the lower cost of production. So I'll say C. Question 23, what would not exist in a free market open economy? So free market open economy, so this means that in the free market, this means that there's no government intervention, so autonomous investment exists, household saving exists, import spending exists, and that means no indirect taxation because of no government. Right? 24, what is most likely to be found in an economy with a positive output gap? Okay, so what is most likely to be found in an economy with a positive output gap? That would be inflation. So answer is C. Let's say C. And then question 25, which statement about the Keynesian liquidity preference demand for money model is correct? So A, it says both the transaction and precautionary motives are interest rate elastic, which is incorrect. For the precautionary motives, that one should be interest rate inelastic, because you have no choice. You still need to pay for that particular expense, even though your interest rate is high, elastic, let's say, even though the interest rate is high or low. And B, the demand for liquidity is completely interest rate inelastic at low rates of interest, which is incorrect. It's elastic. And C, the demand to hold liquidity by households is stable, which is incorrect. So the answer for this should be D. The rate of interest on long-term government securities is inversely related to their price, which is correct because this is how the curve looks like. So I'll say D. Question 26, the table shows an individual's planned consumption at different levels of income. What can be concluded about changes in marginal propensity to consume and average propensity to consume as income rises? So in the beginning, your income is only 100 and your consumption is 140. So it's basically negative. And then when it increases, it's basically coming from negative to positive. So you'll see there's a constant rise in your consumption. So for this one, your MPC should be constant, so C and D is wrong. And then your APC, which is your average propensity to consume, this one should be falling, right? Because instead of from positive, you see it becomes negative. It becomes a smaller number as it increases. So this one, the answer is B, constant and falling. 27, which items in the table are classified as foreign aid? Okay, so the thing here that is classified as foreign aid should be official development assistance and only that. So FDI is not part of foreign aid, and portfolio investment flow is also not considered as foreign aid. So answer is B. B. Right. Question 28, an increase in which factor will cause a decrease in investment spending? So an increase in which factor will cause a decrease in investment spending? This one would be interest rates, because when there's an increase in interest rate, people will decrease their investments, right? People would rather invest when the interest rates are low. And 29, the diagram shows the relationship between tax revenue and tax rate. And what is the curve on the diagram called? This is called the Laffer curve. So answer is D. Question 30, the table shows the rate of inflation, consumer prices index, and the monthly percentage rate of unemployment for the USA over a 6-month period. What can be concluded from the table? So you can see here, A says falling inflation leads to lower unemployment. So the inflation rate decreases for a while, and then it increases back again in September, but the real unemployment is almost the same, 3.8, 3.9. So A is not correct. And B, increasing inflation leads to rising unemployment, which is incorrect because, as I mentioned, the rate of unemployment is stable. And C, the rate of inflation correlates exactly with the rate of unemployment, which is incorrect. And so the last answer should be correct. D, the rate of inflation has a marginal effect on the real unemployment, which is correct because it's basically, there's only a marginal effect. You can see it only drops like 0.1 and then increases 0.1 again, and then drops 0.1, 0.1. So yeah, so it's a marginal effect. So it says D. Should be D, right? So, okay, so that's it for this paper. I hope you find this video helpful. Do share this video out with other people who may need help with this, with economics. I hope to see you guys again in the next video. Till then, it's qiphyedu. Goodbye.